Hi, Women Who Lead and Sell. Today we have Dorian Cominec, and she is an ideas person who has been an entrepreneur since the age of 15. So if you're an innovator, you need to listen to this one.
She was brilliant. Such the mindset of an innovator, how you should approach things, the resilience. And also she has a really neat take on how to think about other people when you're selling in your ideas, whether that's your family, your husband, or whether it's your wider team, like having the empathy to really understand what they need from you to get buy-in. Really useful.
And if you find this podcast interesting, useful, provocative, please share it with 3 female founders that you know. Pass the word on. Hi Dorian, thanks for joining us all the way from Calgary in Canada.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you were just saying tomorrow is Canada Day. I did not know this. What happens on Canada Day? What do you do?
Well, it's not quite as grand probably as the 4th of July, but we just celebrate the founding of Canada, I guess, and everybody gets a day off, so that's like the main thing.
Yeah.
People love a day off, right? So it's kind of a funny one this year because it's on a Tuesday. So probably a lot of people took today off and have a bit of an extra long weekend, but since today's Monday, but yeah, we'll just, for me, we're going to take the day off and just hang out with the kids, watch some fireworks, going over to my mom's place. She usually invites my grandmother, who's 94, and we have cake. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, is there like, I'm a bit of a foodie, so is there like a specific food that people eat on Canada Day? Like, I don't know what that might be, but what is it?
If you really wanted to be patriotic, I guess you could have like poutine or
Yeah.
like, or something with maple syrup. I don't think that's like necessarily a tradition, but definitely fireworks. People like to get out, and it's starting to get nice here in Canada. So it's like, you can go outside and get away without a coat, which you can't do all year here. So yeah, people get outside. It's nice and bright. And then stay up late and watch fireworks. It's probably the main thing.
Oh, nice. So. Are you quite close to the ski areas where you live? Because it's a skiing area, isn't it?
Yes, Calgary is just in the foothills, so it's just probably, an hour or so away from really nice skiing. Lake Louise and Sunshine are 2 pretty popular places. So, and I'm really close to Banff, which maybe some of your audience has heard about. So yeah, we're lucky here. It's a beautiful spot. So yes.
I think there are lots of beautiful spots in Canada, aren't there? Really stunning countryside and not very populated, so lots of space. But probably everybody's crammed together on something, a bit like in the States. Yeah, they've got all that land, but they all tend to be crammed together, which always shocked me when I've been to the States. You work for Zapier, which is an IT tool for creating sort of ways to automate the way you work, if I put it in simple, non-technical terms, right? But what's interesting about you is you're a specialist in channel partnerships, funnily enough. And could you just explain, for people that don't know what those are, what are channel partnerships and why are they important, and why should we be interested in them anyway?
There are different kinds of partnerships, strategic partnerships, technical partnerships, channel partnerships. Channel partnerships have to do with sales, and kind of by building a channel partner program and working through channel partners, you kind of have a force multiplier on your sales effort. So you can think about sales are usually, you think about direct sales. You're like going door to door, doing sales, selling your product. Channel partnerships, you're enabling your partners to sell on your behalf. So you're teaching them and training them all of the things about your product, and you're getting them to go to market for you and sell your product. And the reason they do that is they're incentivized to, they receive some sort of a commission or like a referral commission a lot of the time. But the other thing, and the reason why it works so well, is because they usually have like a complementary service or product. So they'll take your thing and they'll bundle it with their own and they'll go sell it. And then on top of that, they get a commission. So you think about like, if you're scaling a business, there's only one of you, right, to go and advocate for your product and sell it. But if you can convince like a whole bunch of other businesses to go and sell your product for you, all of a sudden you've got like basically an almost free sales force. And it's a win-win-win type of thing. Everybody, your partners are getting something out of it, and so are you. So that's what channel partnerships are.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because this morning we were talking with Sarah Pittenger, and she had a business of dressing wedding furniture. So you know how the chairs in a banqueting hall, they can be quite bland usually in a conference hall in a hotel. So lots of people like to theme their wedding along a certain colours. So she came up with a concept over 10 years ago, which was a more sophisticated version of what was on offer, which was we'll dress the furniture. And her partnerships were with hotel chains, but she also brought in the stationers and the florists. So that's kind of a channel partnership in a way,
Yes.
would you say? Yeah.
Yep.
So I find that really intriguing. A lot of our female founders are selling B2B, they're selling services. Maybe they're selling like training or consultancy. Maybe they're a specialist. Like one of our clients is a specialist in coaching HR teams, but she'll do that for the company because the HR teams are the people that tend to get a bit neglected, and yet they're holding the whole employee force together and holding everybody together through change and moving office. So where was I going with this? So taking somebody like that, where could they practically start to think about channel partnerships? Like what could they start to think about to sort of loosen up this idea of, who could I partner with to sell my services? Tell me something about that. Like how do tech companies found those partnerships? What are they looking for?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because when you think about like the world, like tech, the world of SaaS, like the subscription as a service model, channel partnerships feels pretty new in that space. Like it's not new, but it's kind of new, and it's sort of like the traditional path to market. You start with direct sales, and then as the company matures and evolves, it's like, let's build a channel partner program and start working with these sort of adjacent companies and elevating our product. And it's sort of a secondary, like a follow-on step. And not all tech companies build a channel program, and they don't all do it in the same way. And it's controversial sometimes. So you're trying to convince, a lot of the time in my type of role, you're trying to sort of convince the founder to install a channel partner program to expand because their mind is really on direct sales. So it's funny, it's sort of backwards because in the world of like hard goods and services, channel partnerships are how most of the world's goods are sold. So if you think about like, a really simple example, farmers, right? They're not out like harvesting their field and collecting eggs and then milking cows and whatever and then setting up a store at their house. Like they're selling there's a long distribution chain to get that food to market, and that distribution chain is really a chain of channel partners. So when you kind of like any good or service, a lot of most of, I think 75% of the world's hard goods are sold through channel. So when you think about it like that, it's sort of easier to conceptualize, well, what would I do with my product or service business? So if it's a service, it can be a little more challenging to think about. But like in the example of like the HR consultant, I guess the first step would be to think about how can you scale yourself, like your product. So, this person, I guess, would probably be coming in and doing training individually. Can she sort of like package or pre-record that training somehow, like create a series of training videos or something? And then that way, now she's able to scale her herself. And then maybe she could partner with, like, I'm just throwing out ideas, but like maybe an HR software. So there's all these big HR softwares like Oyster and Deal and these type of things. Could she, have her videos embedded in that type of a software as like an add-on value for customers who sign up or something like that? So you got to just sort of think creatively,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
who else is adjacent to you and who's trying to attract the same audience and customer group, and then you kind of link arms and see if you can find a win-win there. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she could, for example, be teaming up with this commercial estate agents that are
Yeah.
advising companies, here's an office for you. By the way, you may find that change is challenging for your team. Here's, just to differentiate ourselves from the other commercial agents down the road, we offer you this free set of training that you can have for your team to have them acclimatized to the change or something. I just find this fascinating. I think there's so much opportunity, but you're right, we get a bit tunnel vision, and we're putting together a business ourselves. Kelly and I were putting together a training consultancy about scaling businesses. It's about how to educate female founders to scale their B2B service business. Like, how can we give them other ways to think outside the box and utilize technology, even, for example, which is something I want to talk to you about as well. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're interested in growing your business. And if so, we have a 6-week program where you will get the clarity that you need to come up with that strategic plan that you need to get to that next level.
Yeah, if you want straightforward, no fluff, like hands-on, real personal experience that's going to get you to the next level of your self-leadership and to land the next high-value client, come and find out more. Keep following the podcast, listen to what we're doing, and also come over to LinkedIn to find out the details. My questions are always around, when we did the research, Dorian, I really saw an entrepreneur in you. Are you familiar with that term? Entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. So
Yes.
I kind of, that's the route I followed. So always very much advocating for innovation in SMEs and in the corporates I worked in business development and sales roles. And then I went on to, in my late 20s, I left that and I started my own marketing agency, and I grew that to 7 figures. My point is, still today, I'm entrepreneurial at heart. I like operating within big, complex systems and finding the bottlenecks and the issues and the relationships that are going to, open up new opportunities. So would you say that is like who you are naturally, somebody that just spots opportunities and develops from the inside out?
Yeah, in the start of my career, I was an entrepreneur, actually. So
Okay.
I think, the identity, the personal kind of identity is similar. My opinion about entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs is you kind of are aligned that way, like as part of your personality.
Yeah.
It's core to who you are. It's a lifestyle. It's not really a career. It's people who are entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial are very passionate. And actually, I made the case for this. I did a Master of Science in Entrepreneurship and Innovation, actually at the University of Bath. And I made the case that building a channel partner program is an entrepreneurial act. You're building a small business inside of a business, or entrepreneurial, whichever way you want to look at it. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But yes, I think it requires the same type of kind of ingenuity and opportunity identification and persuasion skills and passion and creativity and optimism. All of those things come into play in my job. So you have to kind of like it to do it. It's not one of those like 9 to 5, like.
Thank you for unpacking that.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask something about that, Dorian. So at what age did you realize you were an entrepreneur?
Oh, that's a good question. I was very young. I was always scheming. So, I had all kinds of little silly business ideas. I kind of I feel like I was annoying my friends a lot of the time, dragging them along in my in high school. I had a candy business. I was selling like candy out of my locker. I turned my locker into a storefront and like merchandised it and was selling
That's amazing.
candy. So I did all kinds of
So hang on a
unusual
minute. Wait a
things.
minute. Wait a minute. Wait, pause for a minute here. How old
Sure.
were you when you were at high school and you're doing this candy store?
I was 15.
15. Okay.
Uh,
So
yeah.
you understood what merchandising was. Tell me about the merchandising in your locker. What did that look like?
It's funny. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have the word for it, but I understood that, you kind of need to make things like visually appealing and spatially nice for people to care about it. It was a little more practical because a locker's pretty small.
I know, they're like this thing.
Uh, yeah.
So
So
what
I
did you
mean, I
do?
had so my door panel in the locker had like a menu of all of the different items with photos of like kind of I used like packing tape to kind of like make it look like a laminated menu on the inside of the
I
door
love
with
this.
all the little prices um and then yeah, I had just I had like Ziploc bags of all the different kinds of candy like pre-organized and like slotted into spots, and then I actually got in trouble because I there would be too much foot traffic in the hallway by my locker. So I got shut down. I got called to the principal's office, and then I turned it into a mobile candy business. So I made like a backpack candy store, and then I also got in trouble for that because the school actually. The principal took me aside and said if I'm earning money on school property, I needed a business license. And then I said, well, I'm actually getting one. And then he said, well, never mind, like too bad anyway. You'd have to give us your profit because you can't operate on school property. So it came down to this was my first like bureaucracy, red tape, business environment um, problem.
Yeah, but
So
I
anyway,
love that.
listen, I
I
love the
love
world of
that.
that. And all joking aside, you learnt some really valuable lessons from that. You learnt the importance of branding, you learnt the importance of display, you probably did some calculations in your head about profit margin. You probably would have had to have done that.
hmm
We all, I think it's fascinating, these little stories that we laugh about. But that moment when you do your first transaction, where someone gives you money because you've created something and gone, there you go, that's intoxicating. And the thing where you said you're either an entrepreneur or you kind of aren't. I think it's a bit like crack cocaine. I think you have that first endorphin rush of, oh, wait a minute, somebody's giving me money for something. And it just it grips you. And that's it.
hmm
You're kind of that's it. You're sunk. You're an entrepreneur, and so many of the female founders. I've been asking this question recently because it's fascinating what people say. Sarah this morning was talking about selling ponies. She took ponies that looked really scruffy and then made them look nice and then sold them at a profit. So she learned a
hmm
valuable lesson, and she's obsessed to this day with adding value. Adding value.
hmm
And there'll be stuff that you now do because of what you learned through your sweetie locker. I mean, it's just fascinating. And you learn about bureaucracy, and you probably also learn not to take a no. You learn about pivoting, where you went, okay, then I
hmm
made it mobile. I mean,
hmm
I just love these stories. I think they're really important to tell because they're inspiring for young people, apart from anything. Kelly's got a
hmm
hilarious one about your Lloyd's Bank one. Tell Dorian your Lloyd's Bank one because I love
Super,
that
super
story.
quick, under 60 seconds. So I'm really smart, like as in I'll make things happen, but not so academically. And I did uni and all of that, but it just didn't float my boat, sat in front of, notebooks and desks and stuff. At 14, our school did a Lloyd's Bank. So I think you probably know Lloyd's, like the global bank. They did a Lloyd's Bank entrepreneurship week. Enterprise week, actually. It
hmm
wasn't entrepreneurship. Long story short, we were put into teams, and our team, we were just a bit cheeky and greedy. We made these little boxes in the woodwork department and sold those. We made a newsletter with all of our designs and ideas and questions in, and we also made popcorn. So we didn't stick in the boundary of make one thing, sell it. And we had 1 week to do this stuff. And then on the Friday, Lloyd's Bank and all their banking experts and business people came in, and they were going to award, who got the most income. We held an event, and people came in, and our team won. And honestly, it is still one of the most defining moments, like of my definitely my childhood and my adult life. I had this lovely plush, like fake leather portfolio, and I was walking around with my pen, and I to this day, that moment is such a proud, because I remember leading us to, we need to do this, and we need to think about the customers coming in. They need a little newsletter. They need something to eat. They need something practical to take home. Like I just loved it. And I think that is the creation, making things happen, the buzz, the selling, definitely having the exchange. Like you take an idea from here, or you think of a problem, and then you work out a solution, then somebody gives you money in exchange for that. It is just alluring. I love it so much.
So, and then you did a grown-up business. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I did. It was similarly, evolved, and kind of was born out of opportunity. Like you say, that intoxicating kind of like, oh, here's like a big gap, right? This is like an opportunity. And for me, I don't know, it's really, it's funny because I can be kind of people pleasy. And I've had the comment, well, how are you a people pleaser and also an entrepreneur? Like, aren't you supposed to be cutthroat and like, money driven? And for me, it's like, no, it's the opposite. It's like I see a way to try to like make people's lives better, like bridge a gap. And it's like, oh, this would be a win-win-win. And just, think about this. Someone could have this and you get this. And then, like you say, Kelly, it's like, and then you even get paid for it. What? Like, it's like, to me, that's like very intoxicating, very exciting. So, yeah. Let's see. Okay. So when I was in university, I was working at a jewelry store, like, the Hudson's Bay, maybe. They've just went out of business, unfortunately. It's like an old Canadian department store. But I was working at the Hudson's Bay in the jewelry department. And I was kind of noticing that, it's like really expensive costume jewelry. Like it seems like it's pretty expensive for what it is. And I was sort of also playing around with eBay at the time. I was online and, starting to like, this was in like the early, like 2004, 2005, kind of around that time. And the market, the e-commerce market did not exist yet. And we were starting to see like emerging, like the supply chain was collapsing a bit. You could see on eBay there were sellers from overseas, like manufacturers, that were cutting the middleman out, so to speak, and selling, goods for very, very low cost. So I was noticing, I was finding like jewelry suppliers and things on eBay, and kind of comparing, there's like a really good markup opportunity there. And there's not really any such thing as a standardized e-commerce. So I was thinking like, well, jewelry might be a really good e-commerce product because it's lightweight. So it's like, it really wasn't about jewelry. It's lightweight and expensive, right? So you can sort of maximize on cost and minimize on the shipping value. So it's like, well, if you could figure out how to do that, that would be like a really cool e-commerce business because you could, your margins are good and the shipping, it's like Amazon, their early days, they were shipping books around and I couldn't figure out like the logistics of, it's so expensive to ship books. Like what's small and lightweight? Well, jewelry. So I was starting to learn about it at working at the Bay and what normal price points look like and what the opportunity is to kind of compress the supply chain and like, reduce the price for everybody on this kind of cool costume jewelry. Plus the variety online that I was finding from these suppliers was way bigger. So that's what I started doing. I started importing jewelry with the intention to like build an e-commerce business. So at first I was selling on eBay, and then I started setting up booths at like trade shows. And actually at my university, I was a student at university while I was doing this. And yeah, and then I continued to go to trade shows and events and things, and then I built my own e-commerce website with the help of these guys that were probably thought I was crazy, and yeah, and then that was like my first sort of real attempt at a business, and it was called Dory's Diamonds because not for any good reason other than Dorian's my name and it was an alliteration, and that was what I used for my eBay store name. So I just kind of kept it. And then I built it into a brand called Dory, which, I eventually got a trademark for, and I started manufacturing my own jewelry and blah, 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 which was like several years later.
Amazing.
But yeah, lots happened from the inception of that, like to the end, like I was doing a whole different business by the end of it. But I was an entrepreneur in university, starting in university, and then for about a decade before I started my like corporate pivot. So that was my early story.
So smart.
And so is that story finished, or is there more of that story to come? What's I just get the sense that story isn't all over yet. Is that right?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, like I say, I think you kind of are, you're entrepreneurial, you're not. I don't think it goes away either. You can't really suppress that. So, I pivoted and like, so I wanted to have kids and I wanted to do some further education. And I was very young. I was like, whatever I was 19 when I started the jewelry thing, and then like continued on for like a decade or so. So I was around 30 when I was like, let's try to have a corporate career. And I almost said real career because it doesn't feel real when you're just like I had no structure. I had nobody to sort of explain to me, what's supposed to happen inside of a real business, a legitimate business, other than my academic training. But I had no firsthand experience. So that made me feel very insecure about what I was doing, whether it was really legitimate or good enough. And then I was like, okay, well, and I'm also getting burnt out. I want some stability. I'd like to have kids. I want to do further education. So I pivoted into the corporate world, and that's when I focused on aligning myself to do my master's degree. I did have kids. I have two kids, like 2 and 4 now. And, kind of got into channel partnerships, which was a very natural follow on. I didn't realize it, but I was doing a lot of things related to that in my businesses. So the channel partnerships thing and being in tech kind of really scratches the itch as far as like entrepreneurship, like Kelly mentioned. It's super fun. And I really enjoy bringing entrepreneurial insights into these sort of scaling, growing tech organizations. But one thing I really like about working in tech specifically is a lot of people in tech are entrepreneurial and they're doing some sort of side thing or they're in their role and they're building something at the same time. So it kind of gives you that opportunity just because the lifestyle is fairly flexible. I work remotely. It's a global remote company. I'm not having to drive into work and I'm not confined to a desk for, 8 hours. So I have the ability to kind of still be creative. I'm not being compressed by my role right now. So I've got a bunch of ideas and I can envision, like trying little things and scaling little things and seeing what happens. And I do think I'll probably continue to do that. Yes. So to answer your question, that's a really long-winded way of saying, no, I don't think the story is over. I think I'll always be this way. There's always like another candy store in a locker to start, right? So
Kind of like enamored, in awe. You reminded me of one of our early podcast guests, Emma Keikos, who she's on her second business that she's successfully scaled, and she's kind of still like going, me? You're asking me? I was just figuring some stuff out. This didn't work and that didn't work, and I didn't want that, and I didn't want those ingredients. And she's ended up creating one really successful coaching business and then gone on to make a formulations and skincare business, which is really successful globally. And it just really strikes me that when we are just naturally insanely curious, inquisitive, problem solving, like that does, like it kind of just defines like our path, really. Like even you were saying then that you notice the tech guys and the different people, like we are assemblers, we're builders, we do it wherever we go. I'm sure even with the way you parent and the way you are in your relationships is kind of like that as well. And you said earlier on that you think you would like dragging your friends along to things. Wherever I go, people are like, oh, here comes the pens. Oh, here comes the paper. Like I've always got a bag of stuff and I'm like, let's do an exercise. Let's create, let's think about things. So I think it's just really fascinating how like you pop with that. Like it's very much, I can feel who you are in your work. It's really fascinating.
yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting that you say that about like in the way like I parent and things like that too. I think about it actively. Like I would like for my kids to be, I guess I don't think about it like entrepreneurial, but I'd like them to be problem solvers and I'd like them to be resourceful and, be able to look at the world around them and like, a pen doesn't have to be a pen. It can be a way to open a bag that's hard to open. Like there's,
Yeah.
anything can be anything. And being, having some ingenuity and creativity, optimism, these are all really great values to help you get through life. But I also think indirectly, I am, I've got like a check mark system for them where if they do certain things, they earn check marks and check marks equate to points and they get to like prizes and stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
it is that sort of reward kind of based system thing that it's like, oh yeah, I guess.
You've applied that there. I had
Yeah.
a question just came to me that I know our listeners would want to ask, and that's when you are a natural creative problem solver, maybe visions and ideas come to you. What about when you don't know how to communicate those effectively? Have you had any examples of that, maybe in your earlier career, and some lessons? Because you have had the entrepreneurial side where you only had to answer to yourself, and then you've had the you would be looking now at like the buying of teams and getting sign off of business cases. So what can you share with Dorian on that would be of real value to our listeners?
Maybe this is a tendency of entrepreneurial people. I've experienced this a lot of times where, you have some sort of a vision and an idea of what something could be like, how the world would be better if your thing existed, and you can really see it and feel it and live it. And if only you could like put a projector in your head and turn it on and put it on the wall, you could just show people, right? And I always find I'm a little early. Like people are not ready for like whatever that idea is. And you have to think about change management and step them along to like how you got there. Probably you did a lot of thinking in your head about it and like thinking about all of the what ifs and contingencies and circumstances. And you've refined and refined and refined the idea, and you haven't really actively thought about how you got from A to Z either. And you need to remember the people you're communicating to are brand new to the idea, and like I think we have a tendency to want to be like, here's my idea and it looks like this and blah 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 blah, and it's so overwhelming to people who didn't follow along with the vision. And I think I could see this, well, I do see this internally too as an entrepreneur, and I've gotten this feedback of like, whoa, like you need to step people along, like get them from A to Z where you are. You can't just sort of drop the whole idea in their lap. So I've had to learn to kind of, and I think this is an area that I'm working on, to step myself back and communicate the idea in pieces and sort of just carefully seed the idea and let the person kind of evolve to where you got. And it depends on the audience, like who you're talking to, if that's an investor or, versus family where you just don't want to be kind of black sheeped because it's like, oh, this person again with their crazy ideas. Like there's probably different information that you distribute slowly and carefully along the way. But that's one thing that I've learned is to pace the idea. Because for me, I felt very frustrated when it's like, why don't people see this? Is such a great idea. Why don't people see this idea? And then, lo and behold, right, like 2 months or 6 months or however many months later, everyone's like, hey, here's a great idea. We should be doing this thing. And you're like, I said that like 6 months ago, So I really like learning that maybe that's a me problem a bit. I need to like take people on the journey and do the human change management because not everybody has that sort of creative visionary ability, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to kind of help people along.
That is the way you've spoken into that is so helpful. Like I'm just speaking for myself. Like you soothed like 100 worries there of mine because every time I do it, I bring, here we go again. Nobody's going to get it. And I tend to, my personality has always been, I'll just do it anyway and then watch, which gets you so far. But actually, when you are opening up to a bigger vision and you want to bring more people in, that's not going to be helpful anymore. But I love the way you spoke about that. And I know there's going to be so many. Some of our founders will have a good product and a service they're selling, but then as they move along and they adapt or they bring something else in, they tend to want to go, right, and here's this too, and we'll sell this too. But there's been no preparation, no strategic planning, there's no customer voice to give feedback on that. And so they end up thinking there's been a failed product or a non-starter, but actually they just try to do things too fast and just assume that other people would understand without the proper market research and launch, etc. So that is going to be gold for those listeners. So thank you so much, Aliya.
Yeah, I mean, even big companies could get it wrong.
Totally.
I mean, timing.
Absolutely.
Google Glasses. I think I've had situations where I'm very much a futurist. I'm always looking ahead. What's going to happen? I'm out there. I know I've had ideas in the past and I've gone, oh, what if this happened? And then I've not acted on it. And then someone's come up with it, like you say. What's do you have a regret? Do you have an idea that was a really great one and then somebody did do it? Have you got any of those?
One way that my jewelry business sort of evolved, like I started doing events to kind of showcase my jewelry, like because it turns out it's like if people can't see and interact with a product, something like jewelry, right, they have a hard time like envisioning themselves like wearing it or using it. So I started doing events so people could try things on and like see what things were like in real life. And then my website was like my rather than bricks and mortar, that was my storefront. So when I got into that event space, I started doing these really kind of interesting events that merged like art and fashion with like performance and music and dance and stuff. And other groups kind of started doing it too. And these are just micro versions of this, but I had ideas to do a certain type of event at a certain venue. And I had so much difficulty getting buy-in from the venue that I just gave up. And then I see like, a couple years later, there's this, we're merging like science, art, and fashion and dance. And we're doing this event at this science center. And it's like, I approached this same science center 2 years prior, right? So there's things like that. But as far as like regrets, like I guess I just always think, at least for me, one of my strengths is creativity. I think I got over feeling regret because what I learned as I got older is I have like sort of an endless supply. Like there's too many ideas, and there'll be more ideas, and that's okay. So let go of that. That's okay. Focus on the future and what's in front of you. Just put yourself somewhere and observe. There's more ideas. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So, yes, yeah. But I also, I like what you said, Kelly, too, about the human change management, the kind of buy-in. It's important to kind of step people along so you're not frustrated, but also to test the validity of the product and the idea. Like the innovation loop, it sort of starts with empathy. So it's important to have those early conversations, not just to gain buy-in, but also to validate the idea and ask a lot of questions. Like, is this, what would you think of this, or would this provide value to you, or how do you see this? Those are really important early questions, because maybe sometimes we are crazy and we just have wild ideas that won't work, right?
Yeah,
So
I love that you circle back around to that, and I think that it is so important to bring curiosity to that validation stage, as you're saying. I think more of us would go deeper in that product service inquiry. If we spent more time there, and we did more of it well, I think that in and of itself, because innovators are going to innovate, is what I always say exactly what you said. Wherever I look, I'm like, that could be better. How could that happen? Where am I joining the dots? So spending time with the people that can scrutinize, critique, and give feedback is so important. And actually, you might be wishing to create one thing, but in the feedback and the connections, you could end up creating a different iteration, but something that has had maybe 8 heads around validating it and putting it through its paces, rather than one sometimes crazy wild idea that is a little bit too out there for the current, say, commercial landscape, which I love having ideas, but ultimately when you've had a lot of them and you get to a certain point of maturity, you're like, I'd like some of my ideas to stick around now, and I'd like to see them being used over and over, and I'd actually like to have a lifestyle from them. So yeah, I think it's that maturing process of the ultimate creative thinking person. Yeah,
yes,
I love that you
is
went back there.
yeah, honing it, put it like harnessing it a little bit and being okay with things slowing down.
Yeah.
I think you're right. A lot of people probably, that's a good hypothesis anyway. If you're entrepreneurial or creative, you're probably the kind of person who's like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm just going to like build it and then show people and then they'll see it, right? I think that's like a natural tendency. And you could end up putting in a lot of time and effort to something where if you had a tiny bit of feedback and input, it might have reshaped what you're doing completely and you would have been like, oh, that's actually even better, right? So yes, it is a maturing process.
Yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, but you've also got to be careful, because we've talked about this with another guest, haven't we, about overthinking it. So it's that really careful balance between testing and design thinking, but not overthinking. So
Yes.
it's quite a thin line, isn't it? I mean, you've talked recently in some of your LinkedIn posts about lean startups and design thinking. Like, if I said design thinking to a lot of female founders, particularly service business led ones, they probably wouldn't quite know what I'm talking about in terms of a term of art. But if you actually said to them what it is, I think they go, oh, okay, yeah, I figured out what my product is, or that kind of thing. In terms of the fact that you work in tech, and a lot of female founders are the ones we deal with are sort of maybe 30 years plus. Some of them are younger. They're not as embedded in tech as they would like to be, perhaps, and it's moving very fast, especially with AI. If someone's setting up a new business, or they've got a minimum viable product of some kind of service offering, what should they be looking at to prioritize as tech, would you say? If they want to get started and they want to scale, where should they be looking? Because it could be very, very kind of overwhelming. There's so many tools, there's so many things. What should they be looking at, would you say?
So if you're talking about like leveraging tech to kind of scale your business, is that what you mean? Like what's available?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. It can be overwhelming. There are so many tools and SaaS products, and I think one common problem is like this bloated tech stack, especially if you are lucky enough to kind of like get some founder capital, and you're thinking about like, okay, well, what do I need for my tech stack, right? And you've got a bag of money. I think it can be easy to overspend. and end up with like 40 different tools all of a sudden that do similar things or have so much overlap, like you don't need them. And you see like Zapier is a very large company. And I think, at this stage, I don't even know. There's like dozens of tools that we use, and there's an entire team that manages like thinking about like a procurement team. Do we really need this? Can we consolidate with that? So I think taking an Occam's razor approach and being very careful about the tools you adopt. Consider maybe paying a little more for something that's an incumbent product, because it's going to have more integrations and tie across to many more things, and it's more likely to be supported long term. There are many like exciting new tech tools and products that you can subscribe to and use, and then they have a 2-year runway and they don't get traction and the tool fails and then it's no longer supported and your business processes are relying on it. So that, I think that's something to really think about. It might be worth paying more for a product that's more standardized. And then like to give a plug to Zapier, not, they actually don't know I'm doing this this podcast, so I feel I am genuinely excited to work for Zapier and about the tool that they offer. So Zapier is an AI orchestration platform. So you can you end up with this tech stack of tools, like whatever it is. Maybe there's 10 or 15 different things you're using, Slack and the Google suite of whatever, and whatever else, HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever. Zapier is a tool that can tie all of those things together, can integrate all of those things to automate workflows so that you're removing yourself from the process. You're taking yourself out of like sort of manual work. So basically, it's like there's a trigger. When this happens, make this happen. And then so you don't have to do like manual moving data around or copying and pasting or updating or sending emails. And the thing that's really cool about it now is with AI, those automated processes are smarter. So before it would be like automate, I get an email that's inviting me to an event, put that event in my calendar, send me a text notification that says, hey, there's a new event booked for you, or send that notification to the sales team member. Like, and you can make these like a very long sequence of, and then do this, and then do this, and then it's like a domino is all falling down. But now with AI, these steps can be like smarter. So, I get an email, the email looks like a certain type of email, automatically draft a response using AI, and best guess is like give me a text message or something that shows me what that drafted email is, and then if I say okay to the text message, like, or I use an emoji react, then send the message. Like, so you can really build like smart automations. And that's like a terrible example, but there are many, many, many amazing examples. And if folks are interested, I would recommend following Phil Lakin from Zapier. He is always just he's also very entrepreneurial and innovative, and he's constantly sharing out great automation ideas that you can embed in your own business to scale. And there are lots of other Zapier team members who are sharing automations like this. But those are two things. I would look at Occam's razor with your tech stack, choose incumbent products, and then try to find ways to implement automation. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
Really clear. Yeah.
Let's talk about, can we talk about AI with you, Dorian?
Yeah.
Because you are in the tech world.
Sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's got its pitfalls. And I do say that to female founders. So for some of our female founders are only just taking baby steps with something like ChatGPT. Some of them are not even taking those steps because they've heard all about the energy usage and they're not happy with that and they don't feel it's aligned, etc., etc. And my concern is that people like that are going to be left behind because the cat's out of the bag and it's not going away now, so we have to learn to use it, but deal with the energy stuff that's not so great. And we had such a client recently, and she was like, "Oh, I hate AI," and I've been offered a course and didn't do anything. And I said, "Well, I've got a prompt that I've put together. It's very simple. You just put your type of business in, and it creates a 101 how to prompt ChatGPT course for you, and it talks about how to get very critical and create the right prompt so you get some meaningful responses out of ChatGPT." So it produces this little mini course. I think it's like a couple of pages long, but it gives examples that are relevant to their business, so it can be a bit easier for them to relate to. I didn't expect it to be quite as great as it was. I just took it for granted that I've taken a while to figure out ChatGPT and done a lot of training. But she started using it, and she went from, "I hate AI," to, "Oh my goodness, I was explaining to my IT brother what a project is on ChatGPT." And she did that in 4 weeks? And it's like an integral part of my business now, and I love it. So that was very cool to see that, because I can see that it's making a real contribution to her. But there are pitfalls. I think you can lose yourself with it a bit. You can lose your voice. And I think also another example I heard was one female entrepreneur saying, "Oh, I produced a 300-page e-book for my coaching clients this week." I was like, who on earth has time to look at a 300-page ebook? But it just churns out so much material. What kind of advice would you be giving to female founders to say, okay, here are the pitfalls, here's where it's great, here's where we think it's going, because you must have a view on where it's going in terms of AI agents, that kind of thing. What would you say about that whole arena of area for female founders?
It's tough, right? Because it is so new still. I think about like back to when like the internet became a thing, and there's all of a sudden you could build websites, and back in the day it was very I don't know if you'd have to like build a wireframe sort of website using HTML, and you could like sort of learn how to do very basic HTML coding and end up with a really ugly website, but like, hey, you did it. And like, to where we are today, who could have envisioned that, like, well, now you can pay for a service like Wix. It's like a subscription. You can build a website by like dragging and dropping, different sort of widgets and creating visually like a pretty nice website that even has like e-commerce and stuff built in, and there's integrated like shipping rules and stuff. You can add a like shipping module, so you can set up e-commerce pretty easily, and you can whatever, like there's it's like, I think this is sort of 10x that. It's hard to know where it will even go, and how if I knew that building a website today was as simple as like I just described, I would not have learned HTML. I would not have wasted my time. That's not something that I use at all. Like, so it's hard to say like, well, what should you learn or do? How much time should you invest in it? It could sort of evolve and change and become more and more and more and more user friendly, to where, maybe you're just saying something to your phone, and your phone creates an entire series of automations and completes a project. I don't know, that could be 10 years out based on what agents can do. So I guess I would, to me, or at least what I'm doing, I'm keeping a pulse on it. Like, so I have a bird's eye view. I know sort of how it works and what it's doing and what it can do. And then I find practical examples and ways that I can use AI in my everyday work. If it's something useful to me, if it's practical to me, and I'm going to use it, then I will learn how to do it. If it's like learning just for the sake of learning hypothetical examples of how you could use agents in these tools, I'm not putting a lot of time in it. So, and as a founder, like, your time is very valuable. So if, I think a good starting point is if you're very brand new to AI, like learn what's even possible, get on YouTube, watch some videos, definitely check out like a platform like Zapier and is ahead of the curve on the AI agents thing. And there's lots of helpful tutorials so you can understand what's even possible. And if any of those things stand out to you and seem like practical, then go try to actually do it. Um, you know, and then I don't know, it's just keep a pulse on it. Make sure you know what's coming, what's changed, what's the update. And I think you're right. A lot of people think AI, they go straight to, well, Chat GPT, that's what AI is. We kind of need to that's one tool. Take a step back and look at the broader picture of what AI is, and what are the suite of all of the different tools, and how can you combine them, like puzzle pieces, to kind of get a better understanding. Because if you can puppeteer AI and sort of be, marionette with it, like then you're going to control it. It's not going to control you. So I think it is important to have some idea of what's going on. So I don't know if that was helpful. Sorry, but that's where I would start. The big picture and some practical use cases for yourself. And there are drawbacks. You're right.
Yeah. I think the other thing that comes up quite a lot is around people's how they conduct themselves in the digital world, what they say, how they do stuff. They find it it's almost like they sort of lose themselves a little bit. And I have this constant analogy I give, which is like, well, let's bring it back into the real world. So let's assume, and you said it earlier, you said my website was my shop front. And we say that a lot to clients, that we say, your website is your shop front. And if I was standing outside your shop, what emotion would you want me to feel? What would you want me to see? And then now look at your website. Is it there? And it's really interesting how when you bring people back into the real world, it's almost like the brain goes, oh, yeah, okay, the real world, I can relate to that. But the moment you step back into the digital world, it's like, oh, is that the right thing? Should I say that? Or is that a good heading? What would you say about that? What have you noticed around that?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like whether it's like creating a brand for your business, or like the personal brand, the idea of a personal brand and a personal identity. I don't know why, but that's something I've always really struggled with. Like I don't want to be a brand. That's like expected now. You've got to go on LinkedIn, and sort of post about things and do it in this like authentic certain kind of voice, and think about like, these are the topics I talk about, and this is the kind of people that I want to attract to what I'm saying. And it's like, well, I don't want to like tie myself down to a personal brand. What if I change my mind and I don't like that in like 2 years, or I have a different idea? So I don't know. I'm that's kind of really interesting to me, how to carefully navigate building a personal brand that also aligns with your business, because people are gonna, if they learn about your business, they're also gonna look you up. They're gonna find you, and you are also a reflection of your business. And I don't think that used to be true. You don't go to a store and then you're like, I wonder who owns this. I'm going to drive by their house and take a look at their yard.
It's kind of like that, isn't it? It's kind of weird when you think about it in those terms. Yeah.
It is.
But that
So I
is the
think it
way,
adds,
people sell things, people sell products, and people are
yes, to
interested
themselves.
in behind the scenes, I think.
Yes. So I think it adds an extra layer of complexity in how you think about branding your business. You've got to think about yourself. And maybe you make an early choice, like you go, I'm not going to be that present on Twitter or on whatever. Or you say, I am, and I'm going to limit it to like these types of topics, and this is what I'm going to present. And you kind of have to, you know, for better or worse, muzzle yourself. Maybe like you're not going to your authentic, what you actually, unfiltered version of you is probably not going to come out on your LinkedIn profile. Or maybe it shouldn't. Maybe that's some advice. But I think that adds an interesting layer of complexity for sure. Anyways.
Yeah.
Um,
I've got some questions around, I think you champion in entrepreneurship, innovation, collaboration in your different roles. Have you got,
Mhm.
like, what can you share with us about like really advocating for and championing the ideas that you have in your organization?
So I guess what I can say, like generally, and something that came up in my research is, if you are entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial and you're doing that type of work, um, you well, personally, I think I was a bit naive, like in my younger days. You just kind of make the assumption that everyone's like that and they're all going to sort of think this way and see things that way. But a lot of people, are very risk averse. Like they don't like challenging the status quo, especially in a corporate setting. And y- there's sort of a need to explain and mitigate, risk on people's behalf if you want to really pitch or sell an idea. And there's this idea in my research that came up, the difference between entrepreneurial and managerial thinking. They're both good. They both have a place. Um, Managerial thinking is more around maintenance and maintaining the status quo. Uh, Protecting, like holding the fort, building a moat, protecting what you've got. You're not going to do anything major or different if you stand a chance to lose what you've already built. And the more mature a company becomes, the more managerial it becomes. That's just sort of the life cycle of an organization. So um, keeping that in mind and sort of gauging, like if it's on a one-to-one interpersonal basis, it's, like, okay, how managerial is this person? What is their, getting a sense of how they feel about risk and status quo, what KPIs or measurements are important to them, to their success in their individual role or maybe in their silo. How do I sort of ensure that I'm honoring that and making sure I'm pointing, okay, like this thing that I want to do or build is actually going to help or enhance your KPIs and support you, and here's how. Like being empathetic, I think that's a really important word in innovation and entrepreneurship. And then if it's on a corporate scale, yeah, just keeping in mind the more incumbent and mature the organization, the more managerial and the harder it's going to be to influence with entrepreneurial thinking versus managerial. So, yeah, I don't know if that gets at anything interesting, but
Yeah, it really does. It was that's really succinct, actually. And what I can hear is your experience and how that can inform, again, that maturity of approach when
Mhm.
you are. So I'm thinking of even the last 5 conversations I've had in the last week, where a dynamic driven young woman has gone to the boardroom and not got sign off from a director level person, and kind of like it doesn't feel right to say immature, but the emotional experience of that then makes the person think that they can't then drive forward an idea again. Whereas if they were to take the managerial versus the entrepreneurial like frame that you set up and then just walk, like, I love what you said, like what KPIs are important to this person, really leading with like how is it for them and then developing your communication for their listening. I think that was brilliant, and it's a really neat model for somebody to be working with. And again, especially that creative, the innovative, we have like a ton of ideas, and if we're not careful, we can be branded the ideas person that's very
yeah.
busy but not actually following through and driving something home and actually bringing in the results. So yeah, that was really good.
Well,
Yeah.
and also just quickly before we finish up, and the hour has gone so quickly, that whole, actually, even as a female founder, looking at your business through the entrepreneurial lens and then looking through the managerial lens when you're becoming more stable and a product is stable, and then you go, right, okay, I'm going to apply the managerial lens to that, and then now I can bring in a new product. Let me put my entrepreneurial lens back on again because that's appropriate for that. And just being able to distinguish between the two types of thinking and the two types of even presenting it to your team is really, really cool. I have a quick fire question for you before we depart, Dorian. It's
Sure.
this. If you had a message that you could give to a female founder on a post-it, one thing that you would say to them right now, knowing what you know, and why would you say it? What would you say?
Oh, okay, this is tough. The next best thing you do could be the thing that entirely transforms your business. So don't give up. You've gotta kind of like keep going, keep iterating, keep thinking creatively. It could just be that very next idea or slight pivot that gives you ultimate traction. And you don't know that because you're not there yet and you don't have the benefit of hindsight. I guess that's what I would say. It's that next best decision that could be pivotal in your journey. So I know that's like a very optimistic statement, but I'm an optimist, and I think you need to be an entrepreneur. You've got to kind of keep going.
Beautiful.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah,
I love that.
Such a good message.
That's really awesome. Dorian, thank you so much. It's been fascinating to sprint through the tech world with you and just get some insight, but also into how your mind works. That that Sweetie Locker story is not going to leave me. I'm going to be repeating that. I just love it. So thank you so much.